Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
Okay, hello and welcome to Afrospace with me, Adetunji Omotola, and my co-host, Nyasha Grace. Afrospace is a weekly show that brings you news and updates from around the beautiful African continent. Our focus is on politics, business in Africa, culture, and much, much more. And today, joining us on Afrospace, a gentleman by the name of Mr. John Kamara. Mr. John Kamara is a Sierra Leonean, Nigerian, Irish, based in Nairobi, Kenya. He's a techie. He's a director of Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa. He's the founder of Afya Rekod, which is a tech company that deals with data around healthcare, how to manage your healthcare with data, especially around COVID and all of that. So he's going to come and tell us about all the tools in his magic box, but also he's very passionate about blockchain technology, gaming technology. He's also he's a visiting professor at the Nelson Mandela University for PhD in Arusha, Tanzania. Welcome to Afrospace, Mr. John Kamara.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm quite happy to finally make it on your show. It's a lot of fun. Heard a lot about it. I'm a director of the Nelson Mandela Institute, which is the Innovation Center Create. So it's a little bit different, but it's part of the institute to help with innovation. And as a PhD student make innovations, I help to commercialize and create value for them. I'm a tech person. I basically look at how we use technology to instrument the world. That is really my objective. And I moved back to Africa 5 years ago. She lived in Cape Town for quite a bit before moving to Lagos, Nairobi. Since I've been back, I've been to over 30 African countries just to understand the landscape of our ecosystem in this continent as well. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and looking forward to Nyasha's questions.
All right. Yeah, excellent, John. I mean, you wear a lot of hats just based on that profile and what you've just expanded on. And a lot of your hats are in the as an entrepreneur, and you're running a lot of companies in the tech space. And but again, so that puts you a couple of titles behind your name as an entrepreneur, as a visionary. You're also a public speaker, and of course, an AI capacity building consultant. Can you just tell us that of these things that you do, which one really excites you the most, and which one do you really get the most reward and value out of?
Good question. I think it's really a combination of everything to bring a solution to one individual and help save one person's life. That's really, so, what I do in AI, what I do in tech entrepreneurship, what I do in running the companies, what I do in providing support for a number of infrastructure projects, but it's all about down to how can I impact one person's life a little bit differently from myself. So that is really what inspires me, and that's what makes me excited. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and that's what allows me to continue to wear all these hats, because that one person, it could be a young person starting a company, it could be somebody we saved their life using our health product, but literally transforming the life of one African at a time. How can I be part of that solution?
Look, John, I saw somewhere, I think last year, you were made a director of Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa. And I said to myself, machine intelligence, we know the machines are intelligent, but I've never heard of an institute in Africa for machine intelligence. But we always say oh, they need to transfer technology, you know, all those jargons in the 80s. To grow Africa, you need transfer of technology, you need to liberalize trade. Tell us about machine intelligence and what role you play for the institute in Africa.
So the MIA is actually quite an interesting non-governmental, non-for-profit, but educational organization recognized by, you know, ITU, UN, and a number of international organizations, and also co-funded by them. And the objective of MIA is really to create an ecosystem for AI and machine learning, and to develop the AI and machine learning ability of Africa and young Africans into a value chain that allows us to co-collaborate and also learn from each other. And then MIA also then provides, you know, a community approach to how we actually learn what other people are doing in Nigeria, what they're doing in Kenya, what they're doing in Uganda, and bring all that together to be able to support, you know, the development of machine learning and AI across the continent, both from education, product development, solution management, and also learning about new technologies in AI. So the person who started MIA, Dr. Jacques Ludic, they call him Mr. AI for Africa. He lives in Cape Town. He was one of the first people to do AI, you know, to sort of talk anything about AI in the 90s. He's South African, one of the smartest people you'll ever meet. And obviously, following his lead, we then thought about, okay, how do we make MIA this organization that actually adds value to the AI community? And MIA has a number of chapters across the continent, and obviously with recognition from the ITU as well, and a number of international organizations, including universities. And MIA partners with so many universities across the continent at the minute to also help them implement AI curriculums within the university as well. So that is why I joined MIA. Again, it goes back to how can I be impactful in helping other people solve problems. So AI is just a tool, but can it help somebody else solve a problem that currently, or can it provide a better service or a better life to somebody else? And that's really the focus of MIA.
Yeah, that's excellent, John. And just bringing us to the current times that we are experiencing with the COVID-19 pandemic, there's a clear evidence that there is a very sharp digital divide. And I guess this has really been pronounced by the need that pupils have had to go digital with their learning, with online learning. John, tell us, how can this digital divide, how can it be addressed in Africa to make sure that, you know, the divide is narrowed and more people and students and Africans have access to digital products?
So, and really, really good question. And I've been asked this question a few times in a few public speaking events that I've been involved in. I think what COVID has done is just kind of made it a lot more glaring that we do need to take control of our own digital ecosystem. And that involves education, financial services, lifestyle, health, all the different things that we need to do, because we are a growing continent. And the opportunity for a growing continent is to learn from people who have made mistakes or people who have done legacy things, and leapfrog those legacy things and actually allow yourself to meet them at the point of need. So the biggest problem, the biggest challenge in Africa, especially around the digital landscape, if you look at education, is the mindset. We're still stuck in the pre-colonial mindset, and we're still stuck in the mindset of, you know, the fact that we must do things this way. And that if it's not, I mean, think about even the curriculum. While during the ITU conference, one of the directors for UNICEF was talking about digitization of education and using machine learning in education. And most of our schools, our teachers, our professors have no idea of what it is that we're talking about. They don't even have so how can you change something when the person in charge of the change does not even understand what change means? How can you change something when the custodians of change have no will to make the change? So, you know, the biggest problem is the will. It's not the tools. It's not the ability. It is the will. And this is the problem of Africa. The will to make the change means I must be willing to do something I've never done before.
So are we talking about fear of change, John? Or, you know, I mean, what is the threat to the will?
The threat is the fact that we look to the West and we look to everybody else to tell us what we must do. We look to everybody else to define our own destiny. So even in the same, and when things like the pandemic hit, we become more affected by, I mean, I have cousins in the US, they're all going to virtual schools comfortably. I have cousins in Ireland, in Europe, they're all going to virtual schools, but kids here in Africa can't go to virtual school because it doesn't exist. But those people made contingency plans, or they had plans that could allow them quickly evolve into this thing. But here, we consistently argue and grapple about things that are not necessary. So instead of making plans and making change, we worry too much about the status quo. And I can give you tons of examples, even in stuff that we're doing here in health. It's always, we can't do that. Has it been done in America? Has it been done in Europe? Has it been done somewhere else? Why does it have to be done somewhere else before you do it?
Yes, John, I wanted to just pose this question. We are in a COVID-19 situation. Millions and millions have gotten the disease, and so many hundreds of thousands have died. Now, we know that we see a lot of data bandied around, the worldometer of coronavirus, the WHO tracker, the John Hopkins, and so on. Now, in your mind, how can data be used to tackle diseases like COVID or Ebola even more effectively? Because we see that there's a lot of data out there, but some people don't even know how to interpret it. We just see morbidities when we see the data, how many deaths, how many cases. That means there's going to be more deaths. So how can this data be better managed in this kind of scenarios? So
again, this is why we started Afya Rekod. So basically, Afya Rekod is a data-driven patient health platform that solves a couple of problems. One, structured capture of data. Two, real-time access to that data. And three, mobility of data. And fourth, and most importantly, sovereign ownership of data by the patients. So, and if you think about the fact that so many levels of hospitals in Africa, from level 1 dispensaries to level 5, the way the data is stored or the way it's captured is not structured properly. So it's impossible for you to do so much with anything with the data. All you're just doing is just, oh, you know that this person has come to the hospital, that's it. You can't really understand, the value of that data and what you can use that data to translate to create real solution or decision-making solutions for the problems. Then two is the mobility of that data, because the data needs to move. And for us to create an integrated healthcare system to solve the problem of and helps us manage the lack of infrastructure we have, then you must use data as your glory. Because if there's mobility of data, when Tunji goes from one hospital to the other, to the other, to the other, and each of those hospitals understand what was wrong with Tunji at every point of need, they can treat him better. They can provide better healthcare for him. They can understand the symptoms. They can track the location of that symptom. They can begin to do disease modeling. They can begin to model disease around locations. They can begin to use machine learning to say, let's look at precision dynamics of Tunji's structure and understand some of the prevalences that occur in his life, in his community, in his ecosystem. How does that relate to certain type of outbreaks we have? This, and the ability for us to do that exists now as Africans. We can actually, because we don't have all these regulations they have in the US, the FDA, the this, the that, too many regulations make it impossible for them to actually use structured data in healthcare, because the people who are the custodians of healthcare are make it impossible for anybody to use data to actually provide better healthcare service, because they make so much more money out of it. So they tell you, oh, that the patient can't own the data. But imagine for a second in a world where you as a patient can Gmail yourself into your own health data. That is how you solve this problem. And maybe for a change, we can actually teach the West something, because we don't have those structural issues. If our governments would listen, and if they would actually, again, back to the will, if they don't have to go ask the WHO, if they don't have to go ask you, if they don't have to go ask everybody else, what should we do with this? If they decide within themselves that we can actually make this change, I mean, we go to level 1 hospitals across, countries where we're launching it, and they're still storing patient data on paper. On paper. And then the government is telling you, or the people are telling you, oh, we can't use technology. So you're like, how does that make any sense? So
this is Africa. This is Africa.
So the problem is there, the solutions are there, but as somebody said to me recently, we, the administrators, the people who are the custodians of what we call administration in this continent, find a problem for every solution.
Yeah, and that's pretty sad, John. I mean, talking about that will that you mentioned earlier, I don't know if we can actually start to look at some progression in terms of the conversations happening at the right level, particularly in reference to an event that you was keynoted by the Minister of Communications in South Africa, Minister Stella Ndabeni-Adams, on the 18th of June 2020. And the theme of that conference was AI during digital divides and the future of African economies. Perhaps, John, is this something that we can be excited about, that, the conversations are starting to happen at the right level? And you made a presentation there. If you could just highlight 2 points that you raised in your presentation.
I mean, the 2 points that I raised was the involvement of government in this process, because without the government and the will of the government, it's going to be very difficult for us to actually achieve some of these changes. And 2, the need for the change to be driven by Africans who have the knowledge, the expertise, the know-how, and also the funds to begin to invest internally in our own value propositions. And I do that. I think also when it goes back to the government is, the minister, I mean, she spoke eloquently about what we would like to do and what we should achieve. And I think one of the things that I challenge them to do, including her, reach out to people outside your own ecosystem who can actually help. And I know a bunch of people have reached out to me and said they tried to reach out to the minister because she says she wanted to be reached out to, and the guardians of her ministry make it impossible for them to reach out to her. So I'm actually making an appeal, a call to her, that you should reach out to people and try to make it more difficult for your guardians to stop people reaching out to you, because you might actually find solutions. I mean, you're in a public, you're a custodian of public value, so you should be able to talk to everybody, because you're there to serve. And since you've come out at that event to say you want to serve, then listen to people. So those are the 2 things that I raised during that event, that if the government, when they say they want to do all this, actually go ahead and do it in consultation with the private sector, because, there's a saying that says that there's consultants who tell you about everything that you should do, but the consultant has never run a company in his entire life.
Yeah.
There you go. So, John, can you please tell us? I know that you've launched so many platforms around the tech space. You were quite excited, I read somewhere, about the launch of ICE Africa. Please tell us about that launch, and also if you can also tell us about another concept called AfriMart. I'd like our viewers to learn more about your world.
So my world, obviously my background was partly gaming as well. So being able to see how we can create responsible gaming across the continent. And that was why how do you, when you're creating value for people, make sure that value stays with them and not extracting away value from them, and protect our citizens as they participate in these games, which they will. There's nothing you can do about it. So that was really the objective of, getting involved in launching ICE Africa, to provide responsible gaming and using a number of technology to be part of making sure Africa can actually learn from responsible gaming, and the operators across the continent can do the same. And while they're making money, but they also have, they are held responsible for what they do. That was really the premise of ICE Africa. And AfriMart was, again, looking at the problem of intra-Africa trade, which the African Bank had talked about, consistently. How do we create intra-Africa trade? Because we trade the least among ourselves across every continent. but we trade with everybody else. And there's an example I used to give where you have farmers who make cashew nuts in Mozambique and Botswana. They buy a lot of cashew nuts, and they never really knew that they could buy the cashew nut from Mozambique, and the cashew nut went to India. Then they bought it from India, and it was in shops in Botswana, and they're right next door to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that'll take me to my final question for me, John, which is just, could you share with us your experience as an entrepreneur doing business on the continent? I mean, the example you just highlighted there with cashew nuts is rather sad. You know, what's been your experience? I mean, where are we missing it in terms of being able to unlock the business value that we have on the continent amongst the nations, amongst us as a region? And you as an entrepreneur, where do you fit in? Where do you find the value?
Difficult. It's been quite difficult. I think also, first of all, I mean, you think about the entrepreneurship place as well. There was an article going around last week about how much, but a lot of the white entrepreneurs in Africa are the ones who get all the money coming into Africa. When they come in, so a guy wakes up from Amsterdam, comes to set up a company in Kenya, leaves his land, comes here, goes back and gets the money from his people, then provides jobs for us. I mean, so, but then a black person starts the same business here and is looked upon differently that, oh, you don't know what you're doing. So that's been the case that we've seen. And, and there's a lot of young entrepreneurs and obviously entrepreneurs with a will, like myself, who will slowly say, no, we will stick with it and we will change the narrative. It will change. We will not stop. Our government is still lost in this idea that everything from the West or everything we do has to be validated from people in the West or by people in the West. So again, it's difficult for you to say, well, we've just built this product here in Africa, and they ask you, oh, well, has this person validated it? And you're like, again, that's the other problem we face. But the joy is there's so many young people who are so smart. It's a lot of young people who are thriving. And there's a lot of young people who are looking up to us who are over 40, who are the custodians of the future of everybody under 35. So we have a moral responsibility to stop blaming our parents for the mistakes they made, which they probably keep making, to change the narrative for the younger people who are coming to say, we can do it. So I would say everybody over 40 years old, every entrepreneur, every successful African, you have a moral obligation to this continent. Either you know it now or you find it out later. Whatever position you find yourself in, you've been put there for a reason, and you need to find that reason. And it's not just about you anymore. It is about what are you going to do to change the face of this continent that has given you the opportunity to be who you are. And as I said in my last speech, we don't deserve anything. We only deserve what we create for ourselves, because nobody is here to help us.
Wow. Yeah, sure, you there?
All right. Yeah. Okay. I was waiting on you there, Tunji. Okay. Well, John, I think really that you kind of just spoke us into silence. Very, very challenging. I think that would be the clarion call for Africans, particularly that generation over 40 that, they do have a responsibility to start to model and to start to show what is possible for the generations that are coming after them. And that's all the time that we had today here on Afrospace. John, we want to thank you so much for coming and enlightening us, and also stirring us up to start becoming the solution that we want to see for our continent. And from me, Nyasha Grace, I will say my goodbyes. Firstly in Shona, and that is Sarai Shakanaka. And in Swahili, it's Kwaheri. And finally in isiZulu, it is Salakahle.
Yeah, thank you, John, for coming to Afrospace. We have learned so much about data and technology, and keep up the good work you're doing at the Machine Intelligence Institute. I think Africa's biggest challenge is the lack of technology, and with the brain drain that we have, almost 100 million Africans in diaspora, it's going to get tougher, especially post-COVID. We have to pray for new magical ideas. And I'm sure people like yourselves who are in technology will be able to help drive that. So from me, it's Odabo, Segobe, Kachifo. I thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. And I'll just say it in Igbo. Ayafuno. Next time.
Thank you. Thank you, John. All right.